found that works best.
We already have that solution. We've helped so many people.
It's like you have to design your life. You have to really stop and take time to envision what life you're working towards.
The numbers don't lie.
All those things that you mentioned really could fall under that umbrella of accountability.
It's so important to be adaptable.
Our real core purpose for starting this business was
welcome to another episode of the show Built with VAs. I'm your host Valentina Brega, and I'm so excited about today's guest. This is a real estate investor who has 7 virtual assistants at the moment. She started hiring one person and then gradually added more people as she was expanding in other markets or as she wanted to get more things off her plate. I'm so excited to go into her journey, how she fosters the loyalty of the people, because all the people she hired have been with her for years and they have no intention of leaving. And how many of you ever thought about, I can hire virtual assistants because they don't stick around very long? So let's dive into today's episode and see what my guest is doing to get the best out of her virtual team. Today, we're speaking with Iris Waters. Iris, thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for such a good intro. That's awesome. Hello.
I've been planning to have you on my show for so long because I know how busy you are with your family, with your businesses and so on. So I know you're a real estate investor. I kind of know what you're doing, but please introduce yourself to those who listen to us. What do you do? Who is Iris Waters? And, just anything about you.
My husband started this business and we are a real estate investing business. We do wholesale, novations, fix and flips. We keep rentals. So, a little bit of all the different things. And so just I got thrown in. The more we grew, the more he needed help, the more I kind of got pulled into the business and have been loving it ever since.
What were you doing before real estate?
So actually we were both civil engineers. And so we were driving back and forth 2 hours a day. Joseph started listening to a lot of books about real estate and just got really on fire for the idea of doing, really started with rentals, started building our portfolio that way. We got up to about 40 rentals and he came home one day and was like, I want to quit and I want to start wholesaling. And so that's kind of when our journey with VAs started, was when we started wholesaling. We really needed more hands on deck than what we had, being able to still work and start a new business and that kind of thing. So that's where we got started at.
Okay, so let me see if I get it right. You were working a full-time job and you're building your rental portfolio because you said you have 40 rentals. So you're trying to do everything at once, right? Keep the job and build a real estate business. Is that right?
That is where it started. About 6 months into wholesaling, Joseph quit his job and went full-time into real estate. I kept my job for another 2 years. And so that's kind of another reason why we really needed to scale and get some virtual help, because I was still working 40 hours a week somewhere else. We have 4 kids where, we needed as much help as we could have. So leveraging the help of others really is what gave us a chance.
Why virtual assistants though? Why didn't you hire someone locally, someone in your market? Is there any reason why you chose virtual assistants?
Oh, a lot of reasons. The first is affordability. Just first hearing about virtual assistants. And to be honest, we went to a conference when we were very first starting in the real estate industry, starting in wholesaling, that you spoke at, and your story really inspired us. We're like, wow, okay, like she's amazing. Like we'll give this a try and we'll see kind of how this goes. So that was very eye-opening. That was when I was still not even really on the bandwagon. Joseph brought me to that conference to try to convince me that real estate was a good idea about 4 years ago. And And so we started with virtual assistants, affordability, like I said, being able to hire someone at a rate a lot more competitive than the rates that we could get here in the U.S. And then what we've seen over the last 3 years is just dependability. The amount of turnover that we've had for U.S.-based employees. We have a construction company now, so we unfortunately cannot hire virtual construction workers. But the turnover rate there is insane versus most of the VAs that we've hired have stayed with us for years. They're very loyal, very hardworking, dedicated. So it's just been a great experience for us.
And the first virtual assistant that you hired, was that with us or did you work with someone else before?
Oh, we had a previous experience. So we had hired 2 cold callers. That was our first dip into it. We hired 2 cold callers using one of the companies, and I don't know who anymore. that they managed them. And it wasn't a bad experience. They were definitely still good employees, good team. I was going to say good teammates, but that was kind of the problem, is that they didn't really feel like our teammates. They felt like somebody else's teammates. They went to their own company trainings, their own company meetings. And so we just didn't feel like we were developing any loyalty in our culture. And the more we learned, the more important it became for us to have our own company culture. So as that developed, we just started, we kind of went away from hiring other companies, along with also they were upcharging, for every hour they worked. I think they upcharged half their salary again. And so it made a lot more sense for us to hire in-house.
I actually remember when you came to us, and I remember you and Joseph were on the call, and I showed you a couple of people, and you're like, this is not quite right, the VA one, not quite right. So it was just me, like it was just the beginning of the company. But then eventually I got Cherry, I know you spoke with her from a team, I got her involved, and she was able to give you better people much, much faster. And that's when I realized that I have a superpower as a business owner, but my team has their own superpowers because they do the same tasks, the same routines every day. They have a much better eye at spotting the talent in my case, but they know better what's working for their specific job, because I, as a business owner, I'm being pulled in so many directions. So after that experience, we got you a very good virtual assistant, and then you kept coming back and got the second one, the third one, and so on, right? And because my team already knows what you're looking for, knows your preferences, knows more about your business, and we've been able to fulfill these positions much more successfully. You know what I mean? When I say that, sometimes we have to trust our team. And actually what happened afterwards is, after I learned how to trust my team more, we scaled tremendously from that, because I was being able to focus on my things. My team was focusing on their things. You know what I mean? Like, it's so important to trust their team, right? Because that's sort of your experience as well.
I mean, we know lots of owners that try to do it themselves. And so I'm not saying it can't be done. But for us, our real core purpose for starting this business was to kind of get out of the rat race that we were in of, working 40 hours, driving another 10, never seeing our kids. I mean, at the time, Joseph was gone 12 hours a day, and our 2-year-old daughter was like, Daddy, who? Who's that? I don't know who that is. I'm only awake 12 hours and you're gone 10 of them. Don't know who you are. And like, that's a horrifying reality to live in, and that so many people live in. And so I kind of got off track there, but it gave us the ability to grow and to not be on call 1,000 hours a day. And exactly what you said. I mean, so many of them. I'll tell you, I have one VA hired that handles our property management. And I'll get calls I used to get calls all the time. Now it's extremely rare for me to get a property management call, because they know to call Elle. And so, like, I got a voicemail earlier today and I forwarded it to Elle. I'm like, don't know how she got my number. She's like, oh, I'm on it, Iris. I'll handle it. Like, don't worry about doing anything. Can you imagine that, to own 50 properties and not get a single property management call? Like, and we manage ourselves. Like, we don't use another company. It's just Elle. She handles everything. And it's remarkable. And that's property management. That's dispo. That's transaction coordinating. That's our lead management. That's every facet of our business has a all-star in that position that makes it where we can still grow. And Joseph had us start a roofing company last month. So he's, it just gives him the ability to continue to dream and do what he likes to do.
I love this. So let's talk about this property management virtual assistant that you have. How did you know that she was going to be a superstar for you? Like, what qualities, what was it about her that made you realize that this is the person I got to have on my team?
I believe when we hired Elle, which we hired her through your company, and she is a unicorn of a person. Like, I could not brag about her enough. I actually have gone and presented on her at a few conferences and told several other people in our industry, if you're paying a property management company 10%, let me tell you about this other option, this VA, who is a rock star who's been doing this for a few years. But to your question, I love using your dashboards. They're so organized. Like, for a type A person, it just brings me joy. And so I went in and I actually was looking for more help on the bookkeeping side. That's how it started. And so she had a lot of experience in QuickBooks, had an accounting background. And so she started off, in property management, there's a lot of bookkeeping stuff. There's a lot of invoices and payment tracking and just paperwork. And so that's how she started. And then I saw that she had an aptitude for more. And every single thing I asked her, I'm like, hey, Elle, got this new thing. Do you have any time? She's like, oh, I love learning something new. Literally, every time that's her response. I love learning something new. And so she just took on more and more and more. And now she's our primary property manager.
Does she have a team under her, or is she the only one that's managing properties?
Right now, it's just her. We are hoping that by the end of the year, she can kind of move up into a financial analyst manager job and hire a property manager to replace her. But really, she's able to do, I mean, it's remarkable. She's able to do all the work herself. And then still, when we have gaps other places, she's like, yeah, I'd love to do one more thing. I asked her a week ago, and she goes, oh, I've got some time on Tuesdays. I was like, okay, that's great.
That's awesome. Coachability is so important. I still remember this case when we had a virtual assistant and he was applying for a role in sales. And he said, I have 10 years of experience in sales. I don't need any training. I mean, that's already a red flag, but I mean, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, right? So, in the dashboard that we have one of the sections is actually we put their skills to a test, right? So I was like, yeah, let's have a role play and we're going to record this. So we have a role play and I noticed a couple of things that I'm like, I'm not sure. Like, I think we need to improve here and there. He kind of took it personal and said, no, I know what I'm doing. I've done sales for 10 years. Anyways, so there's this client who was interested in him and we're being very transparent. And I say, I'm not sure about this guy because he's not very coachable. And look, he talks the talk, right? His resume looks impressive. But I see some red flags in him. And the client says, I really like him. I like what he sounds like on the phone. I'm gonna go ahead and hire him. It hasn't even been 2 weeks that person comes back to us, the company owner, and he says, no, you're right. I need someone else. I said, what happened? And they say, like his sales techniques are outdated. Maybe that sounded good in the 80s or 90s, but he's so pushy. He's so aggressive. And that's not how I want him to represent my company. And this is what I tell the virtual assistants as well. It's so important to be coachable and adaptable because what worked 20, 30, 40 years ago is not going to work nowadays, right? Like these pushy techniques don't work on the American market. Nobody likes to feel like they're being sold to. And so we had this conversation and he agreed that, we should give him a different virtual assistant. So it's so important to be adaptable, so important to be coachable. It's probably one of the most underrated criteria, underrated skills that a person can have. And that's most overlooked criterion as well. Is that sort of why you liked Ella? Because you saw the potential in her being coachable and being adaptable?
Something that you touched on that I want to comment on is like the feedback that y'all give. And that has been huge in our business also when we're interviewing, that it's not just me on those interviews, that Anastasia has been on all of our interviews for the last 2 years, I think. She's a rock star on your team. Mm-hmm. And just being able to say, I mean, one, she's hired enough positions with me that she knows me, she knows our team, she knows who's been successful. And I've had one that like resume was great, interview was great, but very similar. I was like, Anastasia, honestly, he seems like a jerk. Like, what do you think? I don't want a jerk in our team. That's going to mess up our culture. That's like, people aren't going to want to work with him. And she was like, yeah, he is. And so being able to kind of have that feedback and not just be one person having to make that decision, and not that she was taking the decision away from me, but having someone that has sat on thousands of interviews that's looking at it with me, that's a huge value add, I think, from your team. On top of the organized dashboards, the getting to see the role play, getting to see the personality test, but having someone that you can just kind of be like, is this what you saw? Yeah, that's what I saw. Okay, good. Just making sure.
Absolutely. And I'm so proud of my team because, our slogan is dedicated to your success. And I love how my team is all into this. Like we really care about the people that come into our world and their success, and we want to make it work. And I'm so grateful to have them. And, actually, the biggest portion of our business actually comes from referrals, which I would love to take credit for that, but I can't. It all goes to the team. That means they're doing everything right on the fulfillment side, on making the matches. So, all credit goes to them. They're wonderful, wonderful people. But it kind of shows you like how little people actually know about virtual assistants. I was actually at an event recently, just a couple of weeks ago, and I spoke about virtual assistants, about what I do, about VAs, and people just kind of stopped me. It's like, oh, wait a second, what's a virtual assistant? What is a VA? What does it do? And that's kind of when it hit me. It's like, wait a minute, people don't even know that this possibility exists. They don't know that there's this huge, big pool of talent worldwide ready to work for the American market, ready to work on our work zone, ready to, like, they don't have pretty much any accent or minimal accent or no accent at all, right? They can do so many things, and people here locally, they have no idea about this. So it's wonderful when you have that amazing pool of talent at your fingertips.
One of our VAs that started with us 3 years ago, and he's been in many different positions because he's just awesome. And so any need that we had, he would fill it until we could hire, and then he trained that person, and then he would move to the next role. He is in transaction coordination and dispositions right now, which I have found to be the hardest position to fill. Just to find the right, like, you have to be detail oriented. You have to be able to talk to people. You have to understand. It's hard to hire people in South Alabama. Like, you have to have the right accent. You have to say the right things. That's probably true for a lot of places, but it's definitely true for here. Mm-hmm. And he can do it. He's great. But I love, when he deals with other realtors, there's a lot of them that are like, oh yeah, Caesar been out to that house yet? I'm like, no, Caesar's probably not going to go out to the house. I always just say he's remote. Because it doesn't throw people that aren't in the industry, don't understand. It doesn't throw them off. They're used to the term remote.
Yes.
But it's just hilarious that they have no idea that Caesar isn't right down the street because he's able to do everything that anyone else could do.
So Caesar was the first person you hired. What was he doing? Was he doing cold calling for you?
Caesar's done a little bit of cold calling, but Caesar hates cold calling. That is not his genius zone. And luckily that's not what he was hired for. He was hired as an executive assistant just to, as I mentioned, Joseph and I were both working. And so we really needed someone to fill in the gaps, doing market analysis on each house, trying to figure out, pricing for each one, sending out the deals at the time, putting them on our website, just managing emails, calendar, uploading our data, marketing, the things that he was doing day one. It was amazing how many different tasks he was having to carry. And so luckily we've been able to transition him. Now it's just amazing how many transactions he can carry at one time. But even still, he was training someone last week on our data management because that's what he used to do, and we had to hire somebody new, and so he was training them on it.
I love it. So what positions do you have right now that are done by virtual assistants? Do you have anyone who's generating leads for you?
Yes. So we have 2 full-time people that are texters. We've gone away from cold calling for now, and so we've got 2 full-time texters. And then we have 2 full-time lead managers. One of those is Chelsea, and she was our second hire 3 years ago. And she's moved up from a cold caller. When we stopped cold calling, we moved her into lead management, and she is awesome. Always one of our top performers. So it's 2 lead managers, setting appointments and doing follow-up. We have the property manager that's full-time. And then we have a new EA that handles metrics, KPI tracking, emails, calendars, social media posting, and kind of sends out contracts. Everything in between.
So it's 7 total, right? You mentioned you have 7 virtual assistants?
7, yeah.
So you mentioned about culture a while ago. How do you share your culture with a virtual team? How do you go about explaining what your culture is and why it's important to you?
So for us, what we found that works best is that we have a daily huddle. It's like a 10 to 15 minute daily huddle. And each day of the week, we have a different theme. So it's not repetitive or redundant. We open it up with gratitude. And so everyone kind of shares something they're grateful for. And it gives us a chance to know what's going on in someone's life and what's important. Last week, June was having her wisdom teeth out. And so she was thankful she wasn't in pain anymore. And so knowing that and everyone being able to pray for her and be there for her, even though she's in the Philippines. Stuff like that. Halloween, I encourage everyone, share the pictures of your kids' costumes. I want a, best dressed costume, which Caesar has twins. So that's not fair. That's an unfair advantage right there. Anyway, but I think just recognizing that they're not AI robots on your computer, that they are people and they have real lives and real struggles and real needs. That's one thing that I think, having a defined set of core values that we hire and fire by, that's huge. Set metrics, I think that's, making sure everyone understands what the expectations are so they're clear and set job duties. I'm kind of meandering here, but I can't tell you how many people at conferences tell me I don't really know what my VA is doing. And I'm just that's very concerning. If you don't know what they're doing, they don't know what they're doing. And that's a problem. I can't tell you today on, this day exactly what Caesar's doing, but I know what his job duties are. I know what his metrics are. I know what his end-of-day report is, and I know that he's delivering on those things. So, being clear in your expectations is important. And I think that's kind of what makes up our culture.
What are the different things that you discuss at the data huddles? Like, what do you have on Monday? What do you do on Tuesdays? Like, what does that look like?
I'm excited you asked. We revamped this year, and I really like how it's going. Well, last year. It's just the beginning of this year. So we revamped it into last year. Monday is Motivational Monday. We do a short video off YouTube that ties in with our core values, just to kind of educate and make sure everyone knows like what we mean when we say integrity. Like, what does that really mean to me? And then talk about it afterwards. So we do Motivational Monday. Tuesday is Tracking Tuesday. Everybody has one number that they report. So they have to report it to the group. So it's kind of a competitive, like, you don't want your number to be bad. Wednesday is Winning Wednesday. So we have a thing in Slack where you can say, like, at whatever, Caesar was so helpful today, helping me train, blah, 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 blah. And so we kind of recognize the ones that get the most mentions in that. And then we're also planning to do a quarterly prize for who has the most Winning Wednesday. So I'm pretty excited about that. Thursday is Transformation Thursday because we do have construction projects. So we go live on our construction projects on Thursday so that everyone that's not in the field can see this house that they bought that was a dump and like what it started with and what it's been creating. And they had a part in creating that. So I enjoy that. And then Friday is Future Focus Friday. So we look at like our quarterly numbers and see how we're tracking big picture. Because I realized that we were really zoomed into the week. Everybody knew what their numbers were for the week. And nobody was looking at like, hey guys, like we missed last week, but we're crushing it for the month and we're crushing it for the quarter, or vice versa.
And you include everyone in these meetings? Like, it's not like you have a leadership team or something like that. Like, regardless of whether they're new in the company or what position they have, you try to include absolutely everyone in these meetings. Am I getting this right? Or
we've made the decision to include everyone. And that includes, like, we have 2 acquisitions agents that are local. They're in the US, and we go on in-person appointments. They're on those huddles. Our 6 construction guys, like, I'm like, put down your paintbrush and attend this 15-minute meeting every day, because I need to be just the same way that I'm not in the same area that my VAs are, I'm not out in the field every day with my construction guys, and they need to be plugged in and motivated the same way. And so we've made it company-wide. Everyone attends, like I said, 10 to 15 minutes a day.
And you usually do that when in the morning, in the middle of the day? When do you do that?
We do it at 10 a.m. That's what works best for us.
And even if you're in the field, you're looking at houses, you still get out your phone and you get on the meeting and you keep that commitment to the team.
Like on the Thursdays that Joseph's in the field, he's got it on his phone. Our EA will kind of be in charge of the PowerPoint at that point, and she'll go through the slides. And but then, yeah, he's showing the in the field stuff.
That's exactly what people need to hear, because it's not enough just to hire good people. It's good virtual assistants. It's also very important to know how to keep them, how to maintain, how to retain the top talent from leaving you, right? And I always have this analogy. It's like a car racing, right? So you can have the best driver in the world, but put them not in a sports car, put them like in a Honda or in a Toyota or whatever, right? They're not going to win the race, because it's of course it's important for you to have a good driver, but it's just as important to have the right vehicle. So you can have the best person in the world, but if they're not in the right vehicle, they're not going to win the race. They're not going to give you the best results. So that's why I really, really like what you're doing. It's brilliant.
Well, and to continue with your car analogy, if they don't ever make a pit stop, like we also do quarterly reviews with them where we check in and we're like, okay, and I got this from somebody else, but it's like the matrix where it's like, this is what I love and I'm great at, and this is what I don't love, but I think I'm good at. And I can't remember the 4 boxes, but there's 4 boxes. And it's like the bottom one is, I don't love doing this and I don't think I'm very good at. And it's very important to know that for your team. Like, what do they think they're not good at? What do they need more training in? And doing those check-ins with them have been important, because it, like, back to your car analogy, if you don't pit stop, you can have the best car and the best driver, and you can blow into the center. I'm not a car driver, but, it's easy to go wrong if you're not checking in and checking back with them. It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. It'd be great if it was, but that's not how people are. The business changes too often.
This exercise that you mentioned, I'm not sure if you maybe call it different, but it's delegate and elevate from traction. Is that the one you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
The 4 quadrants, right? So you have 4 quadrants. The first one is I love it and I'm great at it. The second one is I like it and I'm good at it. Subtle difference, right? The third quadrant is I don't like it, but I'm good at it. Maybe because I've done it for so long, right? I like it, but I'm not good at that. And the fourth quadrant is I don't like it. I'm not good at it at all.
It's funny, like on Caesars, that's how I learned that he really does not like to cold call, because it's in his box. It's like, I'm good at it, but I don't like it. And he is good. He's great at talking to people, but he doesn't enjoy it. So how successful is he going to be making 500 or 300 calls a day if he doesn't like it? Like that's not his genius zone. So that's an important thing as well, to check in and figure out what everyone's, and I could give you 10 other examples of that where I, as a manager, needed help in something. So I put people in a position, not necessarily because it was their genius zone, but because I needed help in that position. And if it's not something that they're trained in or good at or is their thing, then it's not really fair to like be upset that they're not good at it when it wasn't something that was ever their genius zone to start in. So you have to kind of assess that and put them in the right places.
How often do you check with your team?
The goal is quarterly. I'm not going to say I've always made it, but the goal is quarterly. Kind of do those check-ins.
And is it one-on-one? What is the setting? What does that look like?
The plan is that we give everyone an employee survey that asks, a lot of questions, and then we do the survey as well, and then meet with them one-on-one to kind of go through those answers and see how we line up. And the last one we did, we had an employee that was actually not a virtual employee, it was an in-person employee that was really struggling. And he's like, yeah, I hear you. And then I said, no, let me break this down extremely clearly. Right now, you're at 70% of your metrics. Are you okay with 70%? And he was like, that's really low. I don't want to be at 70%. I'm like, I don't want you to be at 70% either. I think we can do X, Y, Z, and you could be up to 95% in the next 30 days. So let's work on getting these things better. And it was like helping him time block. It was super simple stuff. And I see, in a week and a half, 2 weeks, he's already up to like that 85, 90%. But being able to have clear, based on these 10 things that I've said that you need to do for your job, you're doing 70% of them. That was a lot more impactful to him than me trying to be nice, but trying to tell him he need to do better. You have to be specific.
You have to be nice, but at the same time, you got to keep an eye on the goal, right? Because you have to communicate the expectations. It's right there in the numbers as well. Like, no one should ever be surprised if they're being let go, because the numbers don't lie, right? So, of course, you have to set the expectations. You have to have the communication with the team. Let them know what you're expecting, but also inspect what you expect, right? So it's got to be right there in the numbers, and that's what actually virtual assistants want to do, because nobody ever wakes up in the morning and says, I can't wait to be horrible at my job. No one ever said that, right? They want to do a good job for you, but they can't read your mind. They need to know what success looks like to you, because that's what virtual assistants want as well. They need to be able to they need to know that they're successful. So that means they have stability at their job. That means they will be able to continue to pay bills and put food on the table and whatnot, right? So nobody wants to go through that stress. So it's so important to communicate that expectations and to have the dialogue with your team. It's everything.
I feel that so much, because it's really easy when you get frustrated with someone to just be like, oh, well, I'm just going to fire them, or they're just not doing their thing. But it also comes back to you as a manager. Like, have you given them clear directions? Have you given them clear measurables? Did you communicate with them that maybe they weren't meeting your expectations? And and that's kind of where Joseph and I have got to, and that has helped me as a manager have peace of mind more than anything. When we have had in the past had to let people go because they weren't a good match, and a lot more of those were in person than virtual, by the way. And when I'm talking to him about it, he's like, well, is there anything else we could have done? And I'm like, no, we gave them clear metrics. They had an onboarding plan. We had check-ins like every 30 days, and they didn't meet what they needed to meet. And so to me, it's black and white.
I can see you have an engineering background, right? Because you're thinking like an engineer. It has to be precise. It has to work. The gears have to rotate. Like, it has to be in motion. I can see that 100%.
It's very clear.
Are you reading any books or any particular sources of inspiration that helps you kind of step out and see this company as an organism by itself that lives and breathes? And what's helping you?
Our number one book reader in our business is Joseph, but he does assign me books occasionally that I read. And the ones I have gotten the most value, like number one best book I've ever read was Who Not How. And really, like, as far as if you're thinking about hiring VAs or you're not sure about hiring VAs, I cannot tell you how much I love that book. I actually, as soon as I read it, we had already had several VAs, but I got thinking about how that could help my personal life as a mom with 4 kids running 3 different businesses. And at the time, I was still working full time. There's some life-changing things in that book. I love that book.
A great book. I read it a couple of times. I know what it's about. And I actually, I have a friend who says, oh, I don't need to read this because, I got the idea from the title of the book, but I said, no, trust me, you will uncover something. It will speak to you exactly the pain point you are right now. It will speak to you in a way that will help you understand your team better. So take your time, read the book, take notes, understand it. But yeah, it's a great book to really understand how your business operates and how to move it forward.
That one is worth it. I mean, I ended up hiring a nanny it started different, but from there I ended up hiring a nanny that keeps our kids, that preps our meals, that does our laundry, that cleans our house, and all that just gives me a lot more freedom so that if I need to go back to work after I put the kids to bed, I don't have 18,000 things on my list to do. I'm I can do that because that's what I enjoy doing. That's what I get joy from, is building our businesses and creating solutions to problems. I don't have to fold the laundry at midnight. I can do what I want to do.
You're preaching to the choir right now. I completely understand what you mean. As a mother myself and 2 little kids, and as an entrepreneur, I know that my time is very limited. And especially when my kids are little, after every dinner, it looks like a pigsty. It's messy everywhere, right? So I know how important it is to delegate, not just at work, but also around the household, around the house, chores, like grocery shopping, cleaning, laundry. This is, I think you cracked the code. You got it. It's so important.
And just, I think about that so often when I go to these conferences. I'm you got to think globally. It's not just, what can I do in my business? And this is something that Joseph taught me that I love so much. It's you have to design your life. You have to really stop and take time to envision what life you're working towards. And then what steps, who is it going to take to get there? And find those people.
So when you find these people, are you looking at their personality? Are you looking at their experience? What's important to you?
All the above. The first thing we do that I think a lot of people skip this step, and I am guilty of it at the beginning, but it's a huge step, is defining the role and defining the need. You have to know what you're looking for before you start looking. You can't just kind of see what all's out there and be well, this person could help me do this or help me do this or whatever. It's very specific. So we define the role, and then I look at that role and see, okay, what kind of person is going to be best in that role? If it is the kind of person, I just hired I was just looking for data management. Okay, you don't need a super social person that's going to be uploading and downloading lists and managing specific 10,000 people spreadsheets and making sure it's 100% right. You need someone super analytical for that. So looking at the personality is important. And then I go through your job board and I look at the resumes and I look at the role sharing. We've started putting together tests, very job specific tests, that we send out to 10 candidates that I like. I see who does it. Because one, that's going to show me who has initiative, who has drive. That's very important for me. I need someone with high get up and go, because I'm pretty high get up and go. And then after we've done all that, then I'm doing an interview, because I've already seen your interview. So I already have a pretty good idea of what's going on. And by the time I'm on an interview with them, they're 98% hired. I've got the job already typed up, ready to send them afterwards.
Oh yeah, that's so good. So yeah, absolutely right. Put the virtual assistants to a test. I actually always say, don't hire anyone before you test their skills. And that's something that we do at HireTrainVA as well, right? You already know our process because you worked with us for so long. But one of the things that our steps to qualify a virtual assistant is put them to a test. And yes, we have our processes, we have our recipes, we have all this, but everything they say they know how to do, we have to check that. So for example, if somebody says, I have experience as a property manager, we ask them specific questions for property manager. If they say, I'm a bookkeeper, we're going to ask them questions about to test their knowledge in bookkeeping and make sure they're not just putting this on their resume, making it look good, but they don't actually know how to do it. And trust me, we've seen everything, right? Well, in this business. But another thing that we're doing is we're asking you, what other things do you want us to test the virtual assistants on? Because you know your business better than we do. Yeah, we have our systems, we process our standard questions, right? But if you have anything in particular that you want us to ask, we would gladly make sure that the VA knows what or has the experience that you require them to have. And it's so funny because when people apply to work with us, maybe we have this many applicants, but the time we put them to a test, they're like this many, and like, for those of you who are not watching the video but listening to this, it's like a very small percentage of virtual assistants actually stay after the test. But then additionally, if you want to put them to more tests, even more people bail, right? But the ones that stay, this is how we find top talent, because the ones that stay, they're not afraid of a challenge. They're not afraid to roll up their sleeves and be like, I'm going to show you what I know, right? Let me show you because I'm an expert. Like to me, this is easy. So it's so important to always hire after you test their knowledge and make sure you bring the right person on board.
That is so true. And I mean, it's something you mentioned earlier about AI and stuff. I have started noticing that every once in a while, not a lot, I have watched interviews and I'm like, that answer doesn't seem very real. Yeah. And we actually, Anastasia and I were able to like kind of figure out one of the interviews, and she was on an interview. She'd already made it through one interview. She was on an interview with me and she's answering questions, and we just asked her to turn on her screen, like both screens, and see both screens. And like she was using one of the AI softwares to answer the questions. And I was like, well, thank you for coming today.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much work that goes into, finding the right people. And that's why a lot of companies come to us. They'll be like, I don't have the time. I don't have the energy to go look through, all of these candidates. And then they use AI or they use something else. So that's kind of what we're doing, right? We're taking care of all this heavy lifting. So we go through lots of layers to understand that this person is, just really wants to work and is genuinely looking for a job. And my team is fantastic. Like my team, I don't know how they do it, but they find information. They should be detectives, right? They find information like, I think this person's working for a competitor. I think there's something fishy. I think this is a red flag. Let me check this. Let me check that. I don't have the time to do this, but I have a whole army behind me who's doing a lot of work to make sure that people we put forward are the ones that pass our qualification criteria. And honestly, I don't understand why people use AI nowadays, because I've listened to some interview responses with AI and it's so dry. It's so, it's beautiful words, grammatically correct, all of that sounds a little too perfect, but it doesn't have any soul. It doesn't have any wow factor, So if there are any virtual assistants out there listening to this podcast now, just keep in mind, being human goes a long way. And being genuine, this is what people connect to. We want to know you, not AI. We want to know you, because once you use AI, you're not going to stand out from anyone else. Everyone else is going to sound the same. So it's so, being genuine is so important. And totally with you on this one.
I mean, when I'm hiring, once it gets to that point that we're on an interview, I'm hiring for heart. I mean, I've already determined that you can do the job, that you're qualified for the job, that you have the experience, that you pass the test, and I'm hiring for a heart. And if you don't have it and you don't have the right grit and mindset, and like I said, you can't get that from AI. Like, that's who you are.
This is such good information. And I kind of want to make a summary of everything you spoke now, because first of all, I want to repeat it for myself so I can memorize it better. But maybe some people also joined us a little bit later and they will find this information very useful. But my biggest takeaways from our conversation today, my biggest aha moments are this. Number one is, I love the fact that you have a daily huddle with your team every single day, and every single day has a different theme. So on Mondays, you talk about Motivation Monday, right? Something like that. And those sessions have to be related to your core values. And it's so important because you have to make sure that these are not just buzzwords, they actually mean the same to everybody on the team. So if I say integrity is one of my core values and somebody else says something about integrity, but it's not, I need to make sure that my definition of integrity and your definition of integrity is the exact same thing. Okay. So otherwise it's not going to make a difference. I love what you're doing on Thursdays because you are showing the projects to your team. Like, you're actually going to the house and it kind of like tells them, hey, thanks to you, we're able to do this. Like, you see how they're contributing to the bigger goal, to the bigger mission. And that's very important. I think it's a very good way to get the people's buy-in and get their people loyalty. And I love the healthy competition they have, all of that. It's really good. Okay, let's see. The second thing I like that quarterly you have a meeting with the team, and I like that you use the 4 quadrants, and your team trusts you enough to tell you, I don't like doing this. This is such a big thing for virtual assistant to admit, because typically they want to please you. They don't want to lose their job. So for them to trust you enough to be like, hey, this is not my genius zone, but this is my genius zone. Let me stay in my genius zone so I can help the whole company make more money. I think this is brilliant. And the third thing that I got from here, which is very important, I love the fact that you don't accept mediocrity. When you said you're only hitting 70% of your metrics, now some people listening there's like 70%, that's awesome, that's more than half, right? For you, you're like, why is it only 70% of your metrics? Now, what does that tell me about your company? It tells me that if 70% is low, that means the majority of people on the team, they're much higher than 70%. So the people are rock stars, they're A players, they're hitting most of the metrics. You know this is realistic, you know this is measurable, you know it's possible to achieve those metrics. So why are we only hitting 70%? And that's another good thing to kind of mention here. When you're setting up metrics, when you're setting up KPIs, make sure they are realistic, make sure they are achievable, right? So the fact that you say why is it only 70%? That means somebody else is already doing this or has been doing this. This is amazing. A lot of people come to me and say like, I don't know how to get my VA's loyalty. I don't know how to get people to stay or stick around with me longer. Well, there you go. You have at least 3 ideas now that you can implement today to see a big difference.
I think those are great summaries. I mean, the only other thing I really would like to mention that I think has been the hardest thing for us, and we're still working on it every day, I'm not going to say we've mastered it, that I see so many people miss is accountability. And all those things that you mentioned really could fall under that umbrella of accountability. Like if you don't have metrics, then you can't hold people accountable. And if you don't have you have to have hard conversations to hold people accountable. And those aren't my favorite days at work, but those are the days that take us from 70% to 95%. And, we're not going to be profitable at 70%. We have to be at 95% to be profitable. And that's the whole point. And so you have to have a way to hold people accountable. And then you have to have the hard conversations and actually hold them accountable. And in a loving way, you can be encouraging and still help people to see the places that they can improve. And like you said about job security, like what better job security is it than knowing, oh yeah, I'm doing my job. I can see it right here because I'm hitting my metrics. So that's kind of something that I would like to impart on people is that it is one of the most important things in your business, and it's one of the hardest. It has been one of the hardest for us.
What about bonuses? What about salaries? How often do you increase the salary, or how often do you increase the bonuses for your team? What does that look like?
Bonuses are kind of position-based. There are a lot of bonuses, or a lot of different positions that we have that are bonus-based, and that's just kind of built into their employment contract. Like Caesar, for example, in dispositions and transaction coordinator gets a bonus for every single job that he closes because he is owning it from the minute we get the contract signed until we're at the closing table. It's his responsibility, and he deserves a bonus for that. That's a tremendous piece of our pipeline. Same for our texter, same for our lead managers. They get bonuses based on their performance. Raises, we don't have a set cadence for raises yet. I think that's definitely kind of on the horizon. Right now it's very metric and work based. Like as their metrics move up or as their time continues, they get raises based on really their performance. But we don't have a set defined cadence for that yet.
I like that it's performance based because just because somebody stayed with you long term doesn't necessarily mean that they deserve a raise. And let me kind of rephrase it or kind of give a background because I can see how it can backfire. But I have sometimes companies who say, I'm thinking about giving a raise to my VA, or I should be giving a raise to my VA. And I say, what do you think you should? They say, well, because they stayed with me for 1 year. I said, okay, what are they doing? What are they doing now that they did differently? It's like, I don't really know what they do. Like, it's not much. So it's like, just because somebody stayed with you long term doesn't necessarily mean they're producing more. Doesn't necessarily mean there's an increase in ROI or increase in output. So I don't have to wait until the end of the year to give a bonus. I can give you the bonus, or I can give you the increase much sooner if you bring more money to the company, if I see that increase in the ROI, or if I see that increase in the output, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be related to time, but mostly it has to be related to the performance. I want to keep my best people. If the company wins, everybody wins more, right? But if the company if there's no increase in the production, even if you've been with us for years, then I literally can't afford to pay you more because out of what money, right? So when the company wins, everybody wins. So I love how it's performance based.
And something that I prefer to do is I prefer to give bonuses or to give raises to the bonuses. Like I would rather give you a higher bonus that you're getting go back to Caesar. Like when he started off in transaction coordination, he was getting $25 a transaction. Then, the more experience he gets, the more ownership of each transaction. I mean, at this point, we get an offer in, and when he sends it to me for approval, he's already reviewed it. He's got it in a net sheet so I can see exactly all the expenses, what our takeaway is, and he's already got a suggested counter offer based on him doing so many of them and knowing what our numbers are and where we need to be. So I just have to look at it and say, yes, that looks good, or no, try this a little different. That deserves a higher performance bonus. So I didn't increase his dollar per hour. I just increased how much he makes per transaction because, he deserved it. It's like bonuses are easy to give when you're setting out the guidelines because you can tell who the rock stars are. It's like there's no doubt that they need a bonus or a raise or however you choose to incentivize because they're hitting your metrics. If you're not sure, then there's probably a reason why you're not sure.
This is exactly what I do in my team as well. I increase the bonuses, not the hourly rate, because I want to make sure it is performance-based. Now, do you share everything with your team? Do you share your goal, your revenue? Is there some information that you leave out? You don't necessarily, tell everyone, or are you completely transparent and you share everything?
So I love that you asked that, and I'm curious what y'all do because that's something that we just started at the end of the year last year when we revamped our Huddles. In our Future Focus Fridays, we have every month, we have a slide that's this month, and it's this is how much, this is kind of our goal number, and then this is where we're at. And then off to the side, I even started adding, this is how much we have to break even, because it's our goal is this number, and we might hit that number, or we might be a little bit low, but they don't know that 60% of that is actual and operating expenses. So it looks like we're generating this huge revenue. I'm hey, there's 15 of y'all on this call that got paid this week. And so this is the number, this is the actual takeaway number. And so we started being a lot more transparent and open about those numbers. And it wasn't that we weren't transparent before. I think it was one, we didn't know the numbers. We weren't tracking the numbers as well. And so the more time has gone on, the better tracking we've gotten. And the more, I just think it's important for people to know that. December's not a great time to ask for a raise in real estate, and if you're not communicating to your team, hey, numbers are lower in December because it's real estate, then they don't know that. Then they're thinking it's Christmas, I need a raise. And they're not seeing oh, wait, this is our lowest income that we've generated all year long. Probably should wait till April.
Yeah, that's very important. So I have a leadership team in my company that I share everything with. There's no secrets when it comes to how we're running the business and everything. But I'm actually thinking, the reason I asked that is I'm thinking of involving everyone. And I can understand that some people might have a problem. They might think, they're pocketing so much money. If they have a problem, they can leave. It's not. But the idea is I also want to make people understand that it's not exactly what I put in my pocket. There's so many expenses. There's taxes. There's softwares to use. There's tools. There's just so much going on. This is not exactly what goes directly into my pocket. But my goal here, the reason I want to involve everyone is again, if somebody wants to leave, that's fine. But the reason I want to involve everyone in is because I'm not trying to create a group of people. I'm trying to create a team of people. Now, when you have a group of people, everyone is doing their job. Everyone's pulling in different directions. They have their own interest. As opposed to when you have a team, everyone's rowing in the same direction. And that's kind of what I want. I want everybody to be focused on one mission, on one goal, and everybody row towards that direction. So I'm going to share all my vulnerabilities. I'm going to be fully transparent with my team. That's actually something I'm thinking of experimenting with and kind of seeing how it goes. That's why I was curious how you run things in your company and if you do something similar. But it's really important to build that team, cohesive team.
And it's just, it's also just who you are and what fits with your culture. Joseph and I are extremely transparent, and that's very important to us. We hammer down on that so much on our acquisitions guys because they're going in and there are so many wholesalers, and I'm not trying to speak ill in any way, but there's so many wholesalers that kind of tell you what they're doing in these appointments, but don't really tell you. But anyone that's selling a house to us, they know exactly what to expect. They know exactly we're not, sometimes we're the end buyer, but sometimes we're not the end buyer. And there's not any ambiguity about that. They know, and they know exactly what's going to happen next. And so we just felt for our company, it was better. And I have the same exact thoughts you do. They're going to see this number and they're going to see this net and they're going to think, oh man, they're rich. When it's like in reality, like you said, there's a lot that comes out of that. But if they can't, in the same way, they think that they could think, oh, well, Iris, is taking her kids here, there, everywhere, when in reality, like, yes, I do take my kids to school in the morning, but I'm also still working a lot of times at 11 o'clock at night. You just have to understand that they are not ever going to see the full picture, because they're not with you 100% of the time. You have to trust them to want the best for the company.
But we're also the ones taking the risk and taking the initiative and having sleepless nights. And we have to be responsible not just for our families, but also for the families of the people we employ. So there's a lot of things that go on inside an entrepreneur's mind that doesn't make things easier for us, right? So, but that's why I like entrepreneurship, because as hard as it can get sometimes, but I also like the thrill of that. When you solve somebody's problem through the solution that you present. So if somebody wants to hire a virtual assistant or somebody wants to scale their company, we already have that solution. We've helped so many people. It worked for so many people. Why wouldn't it work for you? So to get that kind of, that reward, I guess, at the end of the day, it's like, entrepreneurship is stressful, no doubt about that. But that reward totally compensates. It's beautiful. Not everyone can do it. I know people who are so happy working 9 to 5 and they don't want to have any additional stress. But yeah, we're entrepreneurs are a unique breed of people who like to solve problems.
That is, and it is a very huge privilege to be able to do that. And so I'm grateful for it, and I'm grateful, beyond words, for all the people on our team, because my genius zone is. So Joseph's genius zone is creating new ideas. He is our visionary. He has so many ideas. And really, my genius zone is taking that idea and implementing it, finding all the steps and putting it together. I used to tell my son that back when we were in engineering land, it was like, Daddy's the one that draws up the Lego instruction manual, and Mommy's the one, or like he's the one that kind of draws up like the cool picture and kind of tells you what it's going to be. And I'm the one that like writes out the step-by-step plan. And that's who we are. And, I just think that's such a gift to be able to have people on our team that can fill in all the other steps that, like, I don't want to actually build the Lego 10,000 times. I just want to help you, tell you how to build it. And so being able to create that manual for someone else to go in and do it is awesome.
Iris, last question to you. What do you want your legacy to be?
I think all entrepreneurs have to think about this question a lot. I think. For me, I guess it's twofold. On one hand, for my community, our mission is to impact the lives of 500 people, creating win-win real estate solutions. And that comes into every seller that we're buying their house and they need us to buy, every buyer that we're providing a good home for, every sub that we're providing consistent work for. We have contractors that I love working with. They tell me all the time, thank you so much for your business. Like, you're keeping us afloat. That means so much to me to be in part of our community. So that's huge. And then also for my kids, not to leave them. I don't know if they want to work in my business. I don't know if they'll ever want to work in my business. They're still little, but I want to leave them a legacy of seeing that mom works hard, that mom doesn't quit, that you can really, truly design your life. You don't have to let someone else tell you what your life is going to be. And like for me, I love to work. So that doesn't mean that I don't work hard. I get a lot of joy out of work. It just means that I get to choose, today I needed to go pick up something for my son during lunch, and I could go do that. And that was my choice. And I get to be on this podcast with you. And that's a beautiful privilege for me. And so just showing them that it's your life to design. You only get one. Choose it wisely.
Iris, thank you so much for being on the show today. I know I personally got a lot of golden nuggets that I'm ready to implement in my team right now. And those who listen, I'm sure they got a lot of aha moments and a lot of inspiration and maybe a lot of good information as well that they could use for their companies as well. And I really wanted to have you on because I don't think it's by coincidence that you have virtual assistants that are super great at what they do. They're rock stars and that they stay with you for such a long time. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's something, I think this is your merit in in this as well, because you are doing everything right to know how to retain the top talent and how to motivate them and how to make it to work together as a team. So that's why I really wanted to have you on, and kind of so you could share your story, your journey, your ways of working in the business. So working on the business rather than not in the business, so that we could all get some good information out of that. Thank you so much. I love working with you. I really love your family and everything you do. And what a pleasure. It's been a treat. Thank you so much, Iris.
Thank you. Thank you very much for letting me join you today. It was definitely a privilege for me. So thank you very, very much.
Hey everyone, if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe and share this episode with other people who you think might get a lot of value out of this. Also, leave us a review. It always helps us. We're a small podcast, but we really try to bring as much value to entrepreneurs as we can. So any positive feedback, any 5-star review, any share is going to help us a lot. Thank you so much. Appreciate you as always.